Hi, shiny people. Rawr. Welcome to the very first video in my series of, I don't know what to call it, storybooks with Chio? I don't know. We'll think of something. I am definitely not a strong reader because, well, I don't read a lot. In fact, I hate reading. I hate reading unless it has illustrations. That's my attention span. So, I mean, the only book I have ever half read is Stephen King's Misery, and that was for a school project. But I have never actually read a full book unless it had illustrations. Anyways, I probably won't finish an entire book in each video. I'll try and limit it to about 20 minutes or so. And first up on the list is Newt Scamander. I forget how to pronounce his name. Anyways, it's Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Him. I'll have a picture-in-picture of the illustrations. Let's just skip on ahead to the first page that we shall read, which is about this book, so you get a kind of an understanding. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them represents the fruit of many years' travel and research. I look back across the years to the 7-year-old wizard who spent hours in his bedroom dismembering horklumps? Is that how you pronounce it? Horklumps? I don't know. And I envy him the journeys to come. From darkest jungle to brightest desert, from mountain peak to marshy bog, that grubby horklump encrusted boy would track as he grew up, the beast described in the following pages. I don't know, is it just me or is that kind of improper grammar that was used? I don't know. I have visited lairs, burrows, and nests across the 5 continents, observed the curious habits of magical beasts in 100 countries, witnessed their powers, gained their trust, and, on occasion, beaten them off with my traveling kettle. That doesn't sound pleasant. The first edition of Fantastic Beasts was commissioned back in 1918 by Mr. Augustus Worm of Obscurus Books. Yeah, I'm gonna mispronounce a lot of these words. Who is kind enough to ask me whether I would consider writing an authoritative compendium. I have no idea what a compendium is, actually, of magical creatures for his publishing house. I was then but a lowly Ministry of Magic employee and leapt at the chance both to augment my pitiful salary of 2 sickles a week and to spend my holidays traveling the globe in search of new magical species. The rest is publishing history. This introduction is intended to answer a few of the most frequently asked questions that have been arriving in my weekly post bag ever since this book was first published in 1927. The first of these is that most fundamental question of all: what is a beast? I guess we can read this part. Alright. Yeah, you can definitely tell that I'm not a strong reader. Mostly it's just I don't like talking to other people. What is a beast? The definition of a beast has caused controversy for centuries, though this might surprise some first-time students of Magizoology? Okay, they totally made that. They totally made that word up. The problem might come into clearer focus if we take a moment to consider three types of magical creature. Werewolves spend most of their time as humans, whether wizard or muggle. Once a month, however, they transform into savage, foul, four-legged beasts of murderous intent and no human conscience. The centaur's habits are not human-like. They live in the wild, refuse clothing, prefer to live apart from wizards and muggles alike, and yet have intelligence equal to theirs. Trolls bear a humanoid appearance, walk upright, may be taught a few simple... Ooh, they made a spelling mistake here. It should be a dash few, because a few is technically one word. Simple words, and yet or less intelligence than the dullest unicorn, and possess no magical powers in their own right except for their prodigious and unnatural strength. I am definitely having difficulty talking right now. We now asked ourselves, which of these creatures is a being? That is a creature worthy of legal rights and a voice in the governance of the magical world, and which is a beast. Early attempts at deciding which magical creatures should be designated beasts were extremely crude. Burlock Muldoon, chief of the Wizards' Council, in the 14th century, decreed that any member of the magical community that walked on two legs would henceforth be granted the status of being. All others to remain beasts. That's pretty stupid. That is pretty crude. In a spirit of friendship, he summoned all beings to meet with the wizard at a summit to discuss new magical laws, and found to his intense dismay that he had miscalculated. The meeting hall was crammed with goblins who had brought with them as many two-legged creatures as they could find. As Bathilda Bagshot, what a last name, right? Bagshot, tells us in A History of Magic. Little could be heard over the squawking of the Durry cowls, the moaning of the auguries, and the relentless piercing song of the Fwoopers. Oh, I love that name. I'd love to be a Fwooper. As wizards and witches attempted to consult the papers before them, sundry pixies and fairies whirled around their beads or heads. In fairness, this is written in scripture, so it's a little difficult to distinguish between a B and an H. Whirled around their... It's probably heads. No, it's probably beads. Anyways, giggling and jabbering. No, it would be heads, yeah. Sorry. A dozen or so. That should also be one word. It should be a dash dozen. Or so trolls began to smash apart the chamber with their clubs, while hags glided about their place in search of children to eat. Hags. Is that what the, Bob Lagouche? No, what is... What is that old hag called? Baba Yaga. Yeah, I guess Baba Yaga is a hag. In search... Yeah, okay. The council chief stood up to open the meeting, slipped on a pile of Porlock dung, and ran cursing from the hall. As we see, the mere possession of two legs was no guarantee that a magical creature could or would take an interest in the affairs of wizard government. Embittered, Burdock Muldoon forswore any further attempts to integrate non-wizard members of the magical community into the Wizards' Council. Okay, we got quite a while to go. Sorry. Muldoon's successor, Madame Elfrida Clag, attempted to redefine beings in the hope of creating closer ties with other magical creatures. Beings, she declared, were those who could speak the human tongue. All those who could make themselves understood to council members were therefore invited to join the next meeting. Once again, however, no, that's correct. Once again, however, there were problems. Trolls who had been taught a few, once again, that's one word, a few simple sentences by the goblins proceeded to destroy the hall as before. Jarvis raced around the council's chair legs, tearing at as many ankles as they could reach. I like the Jarvis now. Meanwhile, a large delegation of ghosts who had been barred under Muldoon's leadership on the grounds that they did not walk. Well, pixies don't walk. Pixies and fairies. I don't know. I thought they didn't walk. I thought they flew. I'm pretty sure they flew. Grounds that they did not walk on two legs, but glided, attended but left in disgust at what they later termed the council's unashamed emphasis on the needs of the living as opposed to the wishes of the dead. The centaurs, who under Muldoon had been classified as beasts, and were now under Madame Clag defined as beings, refused to attend the council in protest at the exclusion of the mer people. I'm gonna have to... Like, how would you get mer people in there? They kind of survive in the water. So how would you get them in the council? In, like, the hall area? Magic. Yeah, it's gotta be magic. Mer people who were unable to converse in anything except Mermish while above water. Oh, okay. So they can survive above water. Like Luca. Not until 1811 were definitions found that most of the magical community found acceptable. Grogan Stump, the newly appointed Minister for Magic, decreed that a being was any creature that has significant intelligence to understand the laws of the magical community and to bear part of the responsibility in shaping those laws. Troll representatives were questioned in the absence of goblins and judged not to understand anything that was being said to them. As we all know, trolls are pretty stupid. They were therefore classified as beasts, despite their two-legged giant merpeople. Despite their two-legged gait merpeople were invited through translators to become beings. For the first time, fairies, pixies, and gnomes, despite their humanoid appearance, were placed firmly in the beast category. I'm not sure. I've always considered fairies to have, a decent level of intelligence. Pixies and gnomes, probably not. Anyways, naturally, the matter has not rested there. We are all familiar with the extremists who campaigned for the declaration of Muggles as beasts. We are all aware that the creatures have refused being status and requested to remain beasts. Werewolves, meanwhile, have been shunted between the beast and the being divisions for many years. At the time of writing, there is an office for werewolf support services at the being division, whereas the werewolf registry and werewolf capture unit fall under the beast divisions. Oh, this book, it has a red ribbon for a bookmark. Nice. Several highly intelligent creatures are classified as beasts because they are incapable of overcoming their own brutal natures. Kind of like a lot of humans. What is this word? Acromantulus. Acromantulus and manticores are capable of intelligent speech, but will attempt to devour any human that goes near them. The Sphinx talks only in puzzles and riddles, and is violent when given the wrong answer. Wherever there is continued uncertainty about the classification of a beast in the following pages. I have noted in the entry for that creature. Let us now turn to the one question that witches and wizards ask more than any other when the conversation turns to magizoology. Why don't muggles notice these creatures? That is a good question. Anyways, that is the end of about this book and what is a beast. How long is this? Alright. Well, in the next video, it will be a brief history of Muggle awareness of fantastic beasts. Yeah, sure, why not? And we'll probably also include... magic. Actually, that one's quite long, so let's just finish this one. A brief history of Muggle awareness of fantastic beasts. Astonishing though it may seem to many wizards, Muggles have not always been ignorant of the magical and monstrous creatures that we have worked so long and hard to hide. A glance through Muggle art and literature of the Middle Ages reveals that many of the creatures they now believe to be imaginary were then known to be real. The dragon, the griffin, the unicorn, the phoenix, the centaur. These and more are represented in Muggle works of that period, though usually with almost comical inexactitude. However, a closer examination of Muggle bestiaries of that period demonstrates that most magical beasts either escaped Muggle notice completely or were mistaken for something else. Why did my screen turn off? Don't turn off, stupid screen. I just realized that I've been reading this entire thing with only the face cam instead of the camera. So you get to see my desktop. Do you like my desktop? Where was I? Oh, right. However, a closer examination of Muggle bestiaries of that period demonstrates that most magical beasts either escaped Muggle notice completely or were mistaken for something else. Examine this surviving fragment of manuscript written by one Brother Benedict. Okay? A Franciscan? A Franciscan monk from Worcestershire. Okay. Today, while traveling in the herb garden, I did push aside the basil to discover a ferret of monstrous size. It did not run nor hide as ferrets are wont to do. That doesn't make sense. It did not run nor hide as ferrets are wont to do. To me, that sounds wrong. I don't. But leapt upon me, throwing me backwards upon the ground, and crying with most unnatural fury, "Get out of it, Baldy!" It did then bite my nose so viciously that I did bleed for several hours. The friar was unwilling to believe that I had met a talking ferret, and did ask me whether I had been supping of Brother Boniface's turnip wine. I can't imagine turnip wine being very good. For one, turnips, I don't think they contain very much sugar. As my nose was still swollen and bloody, I was excused vespers. Don't know what vespers are. Evidently, our Muggle friend had unearthed not a ferret, as he supposed, but a jarvey, most likely in pursuit of its favorite prey, gnomes. Imperfect understanding is often more dangerous than ignorance, and the Muggles' fear of magic was undoubtedly increased by their dread of what might be lurking in their herb gardens. Muggle persecution of wizards at this time was reaching a pitch hitherto. Hitherto. Never heard of that word before. Unknown, and sightings of such beasts as dragons and hippogriffs were contributing to Muggle hysteria. It is not the aim of this work to discuss the dark days that preceded the wizard's retreat into hiding. All that concerns us here is the fate of those fabulous beasts that, like ourselves, would have to be concealed if Muggles were ever to be convinced that there was no such thing as magic. The International Confederation of Wizards argued the matter out at their famous summit meeting of 1692. No fewer than 7 weeks of sometimes acrimonious discussion between wizards of all nationalities were devoted to the troublesome question of magical creatures. How many species would be able to conceal from Muggle notice, and which should they be? Where and how should we hide them? The debate raged on, some creatures oblivious to the fact that their destiny was being decided, others contributing to the debate. At last argument was reached. 27 species, ranging in size from dragons to bundimans, were to be hidden from muggles so as to create their illusion that they had never existed outside the imagination. This number was increased over the following century as wizards became more confident in their methods of concealment. In 1750, Clause 73 was inserted into the International Statute of Wizarding Secrecy, so which wizards' ministries worldwide conform today. Each wizarding governing body will be responsible for the concealment, care, and control of all magical beasts, beings, and spirits dwelling within its territories borders. Should any such creature cause harm to, or draw the notice of the Muggle community, that nation's wizarding governing body will be subject to discipline by the International Confederation of Wizards. Okay, and that ends a brief history of Muggle awareness of fantastic beasts. The next video will be magical beasts in hiding. And we'll finish off with why magizoology matters. So yeah, we'll do both of those in the next video. Any others? No. After that, we got descriptions of the magical beasts and some very nice illustrations. I'm looking forward to that, because that's the main reason why I got this book, because I love reading about magical beasts and seeing their awesome illustrations. Alright, well, I hope my lack of reading skill wasn't too scary to you. And for anyone who's a big fan of Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts, I apologize for probably mispronouncing so many words. So, okay. Don't forget that you are a shining star. And I don't know, good night, I guess. Bye-bye.